Hi aspirants, welcome back to Ashwini IS classes. Today my lecture will cover the utilization of public funds. This is lecture 2, part 1. Other two parts, part 2 and part 3 will be covered in subsequent videos to be released shortly. This lecture will provide a snapshot of the following topics. First is introduction. Second, canons of financial propriety. Third, principles of fund utilization. Fourth, fund utilization in the social sector. Fifth, constraints of fund utilization. Sixth, transfer of funds. Seventh, problems of fund releases and utilization. Then approval cost, norms and staff, followed by monitoring fund utilization. Then guidelines for public servant, case study, to be followed by CSS, centrally sponsored scheme, to be further followed by self-help group, and I will complete this lecture with question and case study. We will provide strategic inputs in this lecture and show how some topics of this lecture can be mapped or linked to GS paper 2 so that aspirants need not reinvent the wheel. Now we should understand what do we mean by public funds. Public funds are the funds mobilized by the government for various public purposes. Government does not mobilize any money for any purpose other than public purpose. All the funds mobilized are at the disposal of government, which constitute public funds. These public funds constitute first, tax receipts, second, non-tax receipts in the form of license fee, royalty, interest, profit or investment. Third, grant in aid from international institutions and even other governments. Fourth, loans from public financial institutions, banks and other international organizations, followed by receipts from disposal of government assets. The various aspects in the utilization of funds are as follows. The first aspect focuses on source of funds. The second aspect is concerned with the manner of utilization. The third aspect focuses on efficiency. The fourth aspect is output and outcome. In addition, there are allied aspects. First, waste or fraud in the use of public funds. Second is misuse of funds. Third, underutilization of funds. Fourth, non-utilization of funds. Fifth, full utilization of funds with leakages. Now we move on to canons of financial propriety. Every officer incurring or authorizing expenditure from public money should be guided by high standards of financial propriety. Every officer should also enforce financial order and strict economy and see that all relevant financial rules and regulations are observed by his own office and by subordinate disbursing officers. Among the principles on which emphasis is generally laid are the following. First, every officer is expected to exercise the same vigilance in respect of expenditure incurred for public money. This is similar to a person of ordinary prudence who should exercise restraint in respect of his expenditure of his own money. Second, the expenditure should not be prima facie more than the occasion demands. Third, no authority should exercise its power of sanctioning expenditure to pass an order which will directly or indirectly result in his or her own advantage. Fourth, expenditure from public money should not be incurred for the benefit of a particular person or a section of the people unless, first, a claim for the amount could be enforced in a court of law. B. The expenditure is in pursuance of a recognized policy or custom. Fifth, the amount of the allowances granted to meet expenditure of a particular type should be so regulated that the allowances are not on the whole a source of profit to the recipients. Now we move on to another topic. What are the principles of utilization of public funds, that is government funds? With regard to public funds, money is owned and spent by two different entities. The various principles of utilization of public funds are: first, transparency, which implies openness, that is proactive disclosure. Second is accountability, which implies answerability, like if the expenditure was actually needed. Second, if the money was spent for the purpose to which it was allocated. Thirdly, the money was spent prudently, and so on. Then we come to efficiency. Efficiency is defined as the output to input ratio. Efficiency is when there is more output from same input, more output from less input, same output from less input. Public funds are hard earned and always short of the demand. Every rupee in the public fund is the result of hard labor of citizenry and makes the societal life better. Hence, public funds are to be utilized efficiently in case of public corporations, awarding of contracts and procurement. Then we move to equitability, which implies preferential treatment to weaker sections. Equitability has two dimensions. The first dimension relates to service providers and second dimension relates to beneficiaries. Now we discuss the first dimension, service providers. Service providers implies giving preferential treatment to the weaker section suppliers and weaker section contractors to encourage them. even though that would amount to awarding contract at a higher price. Example, specific sectors include MSMEs, SC/ST entrepreneurs, and women entrepreneurs. Now we should know the fifth schedule. All the public works should be contracted necessarily to a local tribal individual or a society comprising exclusively of such local tribal individuals. Equitability in terms of beneficiary implies preferential treatment to a few sections of society such that they have more grants vis-a-vis others. Now we are taking up another topic, which is fund utilization in social sector. Full utilization of sanctioned funds or achieving the financial targets of a scheme is critical. Full utilization of funds is the first indicator of a scheme's performance. Recently, the emphasis has shifted to project outcomes from physical targets. Mark the word project outcomes. Project outcomes have become imperative. The large capital intensive projects are able to fully utilize their planned budgets. In contrast to such sectors, social programs are unable to fully utilize funds. Social sectors include education, health, water supply and sanitation, social security and welfare, nutrition, etc. The systemic weaknesses for fund utilization are rigidity in the norm, guidelines, and unit costs governing the central schemes. Second, lack of fiscal decentralization. Third, poor program implementation, followed by poor utilization of funds. Then we move to another topic, constraints on fund utilization. There are three categories. First, central sector schemes, formulated, funded and implemented by the center. Second is centrally sponsored schemes designed by center in consultation with the states. Third, state level schemes. In many schemes like midday meals and hostels, costs are estimated on per unit or per head basis. A major difficulty in social sector schemes and in fact other grassroots schemes arises from inadequate staff and lack of project planning and management skills. Now we move to another topic, transfer of funds. Here the funds are transferred in two ways. First is the treasury mode, which is center to state. Second is the society mode, center to IA, implementing agency, DRDA, Panchayati Raj institutions. In short, it is PRI. Rangarajan Committee recommended that all central funds should be released through treasury mode. In treasury mode, better tracking and guard against frauds are being monitored. The 12th plan advocates a paradigm shift from demand-based grants and input-based budgeting to normative and entitled-based grants and outcome-based budgeting. Now we will discuss the next topic, problems of fund releases and utilization. The first point, the ministries release funds mechanically without considering the capacity of the state government or the utilization of the funds released earlier. Second is correctness of the data and fact. Third, internal audit function inadequate. Fourth, expenditure information is unreliable. Fifth, no system of accountability for incorrect reporting and verification of reported performance. Sixth, more concerned with expenditure rather than attainment of objectives. 7. Misuse of funds meant for vulnerable sections of society. Lack of accurate, transparent, reliable, and regularly updated monitoring mechanisms also adversely impact the efficacy of any plan scheme. Now we are moving to another topic which is also very critical in fund utilization. It relates to monitoring fund utilization. For monitoring fund utilization, there is a system which is known as Central Plan Scheme Monitoring System. Central Plan Scheme Monitoring System has recently set up its portal. This portal integrates tens of thousands of implementing agencies through a common system and tracks fund movement at successive stages, starting with the initial release from the center till it reaches the beneficiary. Now we are moving to the most important topic, which will be very useful for answering questions in case studies. Here are some of the general points a public servant should observe by utilizing public funds. It could help aspirants in answering questions in case studies. The purpose of fund utilization is to release value for money and achieve the program objective. Outcome indicate the qualitative benefits emerging because of the expenditure. Output indicates the tangible product because of the expenditure. It is necessary to distinguish between outcome and output. For example, the goals of health program are now stated in terms of reducing infant mortality rates, maternal mortality rates, and total fertility rates. The output will be hospitals, beds, equipments, medicines, nutrient supplies, and medical services of doctors and paramedical staff. In implementation, equal emphasis should be placed on provision of inputs for quality education, that is, infrastructure, teachers, training, enrollment and other inputs, as well as ensuring that translates into improved processes, which is attendance, instructional time, and outcomes like retention, learning outcomes, equity. Fund utilization should always lead to outcomes. Now we have to ensure that she or he is the competent authority for spending given public funds. Often whether a superior office is competent, approval of the superior officer must be taken. We have to ensure that the funds are spent for the purpose for which they are allocated. Funds are sanctioned to a department under a specific head defining the activities for which can be spent. That should be spent only for those activities. Otherwise, it amounts to diversion of funds, which is nothing but financial impropriety. The next point, while awarding contracts or procuring supplies, fair and equal opportunities should be given to all interested contractors or vendors. Then followed by wide publicity to tender notifications. We move to the next point. At times, there is a chance that all the parties cartelize and all of them quote high price. In such a scenario, the government